All right, Mikey Witous, the world's fittest dwarf. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So there's no official world's fittest dwarf. That is self-proclaimed.
Yeah, that very much self-proclaimed. Not many dwarfs out there doing CrossFit, so not many people to go off of in that sense.
However, I mean, that is something we could find out, right? We could go be it the open or the adaptive open and find out, who is qualified as a dwarf. And before we get any further, is that PC? I mean, it was written on your Instagram, so I figured it's okay
Yeah,
to.
yeah. Dwarf is the politically correct term for uh, somebody with dwarfism. Uh, that or like little person. People say they think that sounds bad, but it's honestly what you are. Um, so, but yeah, that's what we go by.
I'm People call me a little person, and I take offense to that personally. But so, I mean, we could look that up. We could find out if, in fact, you are the world's fittest dwarf. But I want to get some questions out of the way. What is the difference? And again, I don't want to offend anybody. Dwarf and midget, is there a difference there?
uh, Technicality, no, because um, midget is actually the like derogatory term for
That's
it
so. That's
because
a that's
yeah.
well. I'm sorry then for saying it,
Oh
but
no worries. And very small population of the world actually even like knows that unless you actually know somebody with dwarfism or something. And it's really only because the word midget derives from basically like a fruit fly, which is called a midge. And so in this, like when little people were being sent off to the circus because their families didn't want to like take care of them, they just referred them as that because they and like basically like insignificant flies.
so like back in the day, that was the thing. If you had a little
Yeah,
person born to your family, it's like, all right, we know your career. You're going to the circus.
yeah. It's basically like if you had somebody with like a mental disability or something, like it's like, oh, we have nothing like they actually the doctors that my mom went to in the 90s when she was having me even said like something like, oh, they like to be together, they like to
What is
form clusters and be around people like them. And it's like I didn't meet another little person until I was 18, and so it's like my mom definitely didn't take that to heart.
yeah, that's so crazy. Like, oh, they like to congregate together. That's so
Yeah,
stupid. That's such a ignorant thing to say.
yeah, they have to be together, otherwise they can't socially like. And then she changed doctors, went to another doctor. He's like, yeah, they're doctors, lawyers, uh, whatever, business people. Like he's like, yeah, that don't take that.
Yeah, turns out they're just normal people.
Yeah, they're just short.
So what defines it? Because I was doing a little bit of research, and what I did find is like under 5 foot. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so 4 foot 11, so basically, yeah, 5 foot, um, and shorter is technically you'll get a lot of uh, uh, average height women who are 4'11,
I was gonna
6'10",
say my mom is 4'9".
yeah, yeah, they'll be claiming it, and I'm like, well, no, you're not really because you're just short. It, there's an actual like genetic mutation that takes place to actually and to have characteristics of it, like just like any other kind of random mutation, like Down syndrome or anything else. Um, it, you have to show signs other than just being short.
So and I want to get into it. So the whole reason I mean, I did see you at Wodapalooza, and as we were talking, we have a mutual friend. Your college roommate is the head coach over at the box that I train
Mm-hmm.
at. Awesome, awesome dude, Dom. He also programs for my wife. I mean, certainly look him up. Dominic D'Agostino, great programmer, and he works for Brute Strength. But you guys were sitting near each other at Wodapalooza. I was sitting there, and then I had on Stouty, Logan, and Steph, and we talked a lot about the adaptive community. And I was like, wait a second, I'm 5'3". like, should I be competing against Mikey? Like, I think there was a head-to-head battle because I saw you at Wodapalooa. I was like, this is a little unfair if I'm gonna, be honest. Like, I'm going against these big dudes. I'm 4 inches away from qualifying.
Yeah, no, you could definitely probably, I don't know if Saudi would let you, but um, yeah, there's a little bit more with me than just meets the eye. With my body won't move exactly the same as somebody else's. Like my arms won't lock out at full, like the elbow joint like keeps it from going bending all the way straight. So there's that, and then our hips tend to not go fully fully open. Like if you were to see us standing straight up, you would notice that there's a little bit of a degree of bend there.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, I will say if I've seen a little person, I kind of almost looks like their pelvis is anterior, kind of like tilted a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So and just the structures of our shins and our forearms are like the bones are kind of just a little bit different, that it can affect some things. I had to have leg straightening surgery as a kid. I had 2 surgeries to make sure that my knees and hips didn't just completely fail on me because they were basically bending in, and so like I can't really explain it other than it was basically like my shins were like like if you were to make a C with your hand.
Right.
So it was putting a lot of pressure on my hips and knees.
So, how old are you, Mikey?
I'm 27.
27. You stumble up, you see this CrossFit thing. What makes you think to yourself, okay, this would be good for me to decide to check out?
Um, I had known Dom was doing it for a while, but I actually got involved in it because my dad was actually doing it for like 3 years before me, and he had been doing it and always talked about it. And I basically had the first CrossFit reaction that most people have, where it's like, "Oh, what the hell is this? No, I'm not doing that. That looks weird." And then I actually tried it and realized that it was a lot similar to what I had been doing basically with wrestling growing up. And I loved how tired you felt after, and how you're competing against other people, even though you're in a gym and it's a community and you love everyone in your community that's in your gym. You're still competing with them daily just to try to. You could have a 6-year-old woman next to you doing dumbbell snatches with a 10-pound weight, and you're doing it with a 50, but you still want to beat her.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
you know she's gonna beat you because she's got the lighter weight, but you don't want to let that happen. And that's just the thing I realized that I really loved about it, and it gave me that competition back in life that I had, which really drives me.
I have a funny story about that. I had an older woman, Donna. She's one of my first athletes. I was training her, but she was at this point probably 75. We were in the middle of a workout with thrusters. Last round, she was going like an empty training bar, and I think the workout at 115. And I picked up that bar and I was like, "Don't put it down." And the only reason was to beat Donna, And it
Yeah,
was like, and I told her after, I was like, I want, and she loved it because she was like, this, I'm not young, but she was like, this guy's going harder just to beat me. It was really cool. So you grew up wrestling like I did. One of our rival teams had a little person, and I used to have to wrestle him because I was 91 pounds, and that was the lightest weight class in New York, and it was hard. The kid was strong. I got the better of him usually on the mats, but I was always scared to go against him because he was so strong. You know, at 91 pounds, he had so much more muscle than I did.
yeah.
Um, how did you do at wrestling?
I did fairly well. I was actually going to be a preferred walk-on at the University of Purdue, or Purdue University.
The Boilermakers, yeah.
Yep. But I actually had to retire from wrestling towards the end of my senior year in high school because the complication with dwarfism is spinal stenosis, which is the narrowing of the spinal column, and basically it was something that I had been hiding from my parents for about like 6 years, because I kind of in the back of my head knew something was up and knew it was probably something that was gonna make me have to stop doing whatever I wanted to. And so I basically hit it from seventh grade football onto my senior year. But I figured it was time to tell them when like my legs weren't, I had no feeling in them, and I was like, yeah, that's, I'm able to walk, but I don't feel them. That's probably an
So,
issue.
okay, let's brush past the fact that you just told us you played football as well, you know, but which is impressive. But because I couldn't, I mean, I wasn't allowed to play football because I was too small. So, mom, if you're listening, you should have let me play football. But you hid having I mean, at 12, 13 years old, what kind of kid thinks I'm not going to tell my parents that I can't feel my legs? Like, you must be incredibly driven to
I'm a
even think that.
superly competitively driven person. The idea of having competition possibly taken out of my life was very difficult for me. So I was, and like CrossFit now, back then wrestling was my life, and so it was like taking that out was going to be like the end of the world to me. And so I was like, oh, well, I found ways I can like get this to not be as bad, and to like, oh, if I just do this stretch, it kind of goes away, and then I just sit down for a little bit, and then I can go and keep wrestling or do do whatever else. And it just eventually caught up to me. And it's funny how now I never used to squat really. I never used to do any lifting, well, like other than like basic for wrestling. But I never like threw on the 300 pounds on the barbell just to see how many times I could go with it. Um, and now it's like CrossFit has saved my back almost. It's I don't get it. A lot of people don't understand it because they're like, how are you deadlifting and squatting but you had back problems? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what made you, when you were saying all this, I was thinking, what about CrossFit allows you to do this when you couldn't wrestle? It's probably the impact. CrossFit, while moving fast, you're doing functional movements under control. Where wrestling, you
Yeah,
never know what position you're going to be put into. You're going to be, cradled, and, something goes wrong in your spine there.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of it, yeah, between that or somebody puts the legs in on top and they're putting their hips down on you, puts a lot of pressure there.
No one's putting legs in on you, though.
People did. It was very odd, and I never really expected it.
Did you just laugh a little bit? Like, come on, dude, I'm taking my leg
Yeah,
right out of here.
yeah. They would. I and it was, yeah, I don't know. It was a really odd thing when people were able to get them in. It was usually a guy who was really good at putting in legs. So Indiana's a pretty a decent spot for wrestling, being in the Midwest, and it's yeah, it was never fun to get put in legs.
And for those listening, they don't understand exactly what that is, but basically, someone's on top of you, putting one of their legs, between yours, and wrapping it around. And the reason I was joking is because Mikey's got smaller legs, so it's you kind of have to make a grip almost with your shin on their calf. I just am thinking that's
Yeah,
kind of silly. But what
yeah,
was
they
your
never put
go-to?
you in.
Yeah, right. What was your go-to move? Like, well, for me, I always like to shoot a high crotch into a double leg. What did you like to do?
I did a lot of throwing and front headlocks and snap downs. Um, one of the things that I was known for was like a jap whiz or an arm spin, uh, that I'd catch a lot of kids. I actually knocked out one of my best friends in practice doing that once, and it
Just
was
caught it so deep and threw him.
he landed right on his head. He stood up, eyes went crossed, and I caught him right before he fell into the door. But it was it, I I I always slowed down on my throwing after that.
Well, so you have this athletic background, and you realize, all right, I can do anything. You say your father found CrossFit. I assume, I don't know what the proper term is. Your parents are just typical sized adults,
Yep, yep.
right?
Yeah, they're average height, and My three siblings are all average height. They, it's really only a gene once it's been after it's been mutated. So it actually comes from the dad. So fathers will pass it. It's not like a sex gene or anything, but it's just like a gene that comes through them that mutates, and then once it does, it then becomes part of my genes, so I can pass it on. Like when my wife and I had our son, he's a little person now. It's a 25% chance that I send it on, a 25% chance that she would. It's basically like the periodic table. I think that's what they call it.
So,
Or
so
Punnett square. That's what it is. Punnett square.
you're married and you have a son.
Yes.
So is your wife a little person?
Yes.
Is she over there? Could you kind of look
No,
towards her?
she's outside the door. She stays on the down low with this, with the CrossFit and the Instagram page, trying to stay out of the spotlight. But every once in a while, she'll let me post about her.
So okay, I'm gonna ask you a question again. I come from a good place. As a little person, were you more attracted to other little people?
Um, no, because
Has anyone
growing up,
asked you that before? Is that a first time question for you?
I don't know if I've ever even really thought of it.
Oh, that's even
Yeah,
better. I'm happy with
yeah,
it.
yeah. Um, I'd say the emotional like attraction is more because of the fact that you have something in common like that. Um, like that's something that obviously my wife and I have more of, just because it's like, okay, somebody who is
You understand each
like
other.
me, yeah, somebody who has, they've gone through similar things as me, and I guess it kind of I'd say yeah. Then I am probably more would be more attracted, um, because of the fact that you're also eye to eye with somebody. You're not you're not just like at their hip or
No, and
but that's just my other people. I have friends who are little people who have wives who are average height or vice versa, and it, I think that's probably just my opinion more than
yeah, I
anything.
mean, having I don't want to refer to myself as a little person in this scenario, but being shorter stature, growing up, I don't think I ever dated anyone significantly tall, more than an inch taller. My wife's 5'1", and I think it's you tend to be attracted to the type of person you're attracted to. Now, so your father finds CrossFit, you dive in. I assume you're hooked. What were some of the immediate challenges that you had going forward with CrossFit? Like, what is something that maybe or some things that we don't realize? I look at it, and I'm obviously joking, being like I'm 5'3", but for me, rowing and wall balls are just clear challenges, right, based on
Yeah.
my height. But what are some other things that we might not consider?
The biggest thing is grip. Um, Being a little person, you also have little hands, little like little fingers, and but you still do pull-ups on the same size bar. Uh, you clean the same size bar, and so that's like one of the hardest things to have to develop is your grip strength as well as your grip endurance, because it's like you can I could strap myself onto the bar with like straps and do a million deadlifts at 225, but it's not the same as if I just do traditional deadlifts. Um, and yeah, I'd say grip is the biggest thing that people don't understand, is just because of how much harder it is to when you can't really hook grip anything. Like
I
my
was
hook
gonna
grip,
say, can you hook grip
I kind of like do an opposite hook grip. Most people do their thumb on top of their fingers or under.
underneath? Yeah.
Yeah, under. I do it over, and
So you're
I
like
can't do
this.
it. Yeah, I can't do it under because I can't. I don't know what it is, but I can't reach it for some
I
reason.
know, every weekend we're at a level one. I'm coaching at a level one or a level two seminar. And when we coach the snatch, there's inevitably someone that's like, I have tiny hands. And I'm like, look at mine. I hook grip. You have to hook grip. So
Yeah.
I can empathize with that. Is there when I talk with Stouty and Logan, the challenge with the adaptive community and the adaptive workouts is there's it's limitless, the scaling options.
Yeah.
That it's crazy. For those listening to this episode, go back and listen to that, because it's like there are so many factors we don't take into account. When you scale, it's relatively easy. Drop the load, drop the reps, etc. Adapting, I mean, Logan has one arm. He's got, and he's competing
Yeah.
beside you. So, has there ever been a talk of, hey, I can use a training bar or a female bar because of that?
It's funny you brought that up. My dad actually always tried to push the gym owner, Nick Urankar. He always tried to push him to have me use a woman's or a trainer bar, and I've always turned it down. I've also not seen, like, I don't know if it's just comfort or not being used to it, but I haven't seen any change in my lifts when I've tried it. So I've tried deadlifting with a women's bar before, and my one rep was no better. It may have actually been a little bit worse because it was the smaller. Like, I don't know, something to do with it being smaller. It was harder to hold on for me too, and I think it's just something to do with the grip endurance. Even though it's only like I was only doing a one rep, it's just like the being able to hold it for that time was.
Yeah, it was like in the open for years. They would be like, you can use any bar, and inevitably, guys at the box would be like, well, I'll use the girl bar. It's going to be easier on somebody. And I'm like, it doesn't really. If you're not
No.
used to training with it, and
Yeah.
and plus, it's kind of like you have to hand in your man card along with that.
Yeah, it's like not hitting the ladies' tees. Like,
Yeah,
you're,
exactly.
it's like you're not doing the same thing as everyone else. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to everyone else if you're. And I'm once again I'm that competitive that I'm not somebody who would find a way to dumb it down for myself, and to, even though it might be the smarter thing to do, or like it would benefit me to, I'd be able to go faster or something. To me, it's like in my head, I'm like, well, I am not doing it the same as him, and I need to do it the same way as they're doing it.
So these are some of the challenges. What are some of the advantages?
Oh, definitely squatting. Uh, Anything like wall balls, as much as they're difficult, I go to a different size, a different height than other people.
What height do
But
you go to?
I go to 7 feet.
Do you think I should be going to 7 feet at 5'3"?
No, the other difference is, since my arms are shorter, pressing is not getting the same physics out of it
So your
as.
arms, can you put how much higher? Okay, but
So
yeah,
when I do a like a one rep push press or a one rep jerk, um, the bar almost hits me in the head every time.
because it's
So
barely clearing your head, is what you're saying.
yeah, barely. My arms, when they have a bar in it, are barely going over my head.
So is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
It's a disadvantage in the fact that I have to think about it before I lift, that I could knock myself out.
but squatting, I mean, that range of motion is a bit shorter.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's shorter for that, and it's definitely a benefit. Uh, but it's something that I have had to work on too. Like, I didn't walk into CrossFit with a 400-pound back squat. I think my one rep when I did the first CrossFit total the first time we did it was like 285 or something like that.
Well,
And
that's still very strong first time squatting.
yeah, yeah, it's very strong, but a lot of people think, uh, because of being shorter, you can just walk in and like, oh, there, 400
I know.
pounds.
I mean, for me, it's always like whenever a workout that comes up that's advantageous for a shorter person, they're like, oh, it's squat, it's deadlift, it's burpees, so easy. I'm like, hey, dude, I still got to go to a 10-foot target. I still have to jump on this box that's up to my
Yeah,
chest. Like
like the
there's
Open
a,
this year.
yeah, that rowing wall ball workout was terrible. And and I think with that being said, that's true for all sizes, right?
Yeah,
If you're too tall, you're going to have some disadvantages, and that's why at the games, the athletes all tend to look about the same.
yeah,
Um,
all about the same height.
so How did you come up with 7 feet for the wall ball target?
I actually asked Stouty for when I was doing the Wodapalooa like oh, qualifier online challenge. Uh, we've been trying to figure out what the the standard for dwarfs and little people is, um, because of the fact that like and my legs also are shorter. I don't get as much momentum out of my arms or legs when throwing a wall ball. It I have to go down to a probably I think it's a 10 or 12 pound ball to get it up to 10 feet, and I can get 14 up to 8 or 9, and adaptives all typically always use 14. So they have me go, or was it 8? I don't remember what height
So
he
are you the tester though, basically for little people?
yeah, I know there's been some women who have done it, but I believe they were doing the scaled women's, and so they weren't able to like really put a true standard out there. And then now, since I'm like the first men's RX adaptive that they had, they're like, okay, well, we need to go off of the standard. And part of the issue in getting other little people guys to do it is they're also competitive, just like me. A little bit of that short man syndrome, where like uh, we're all super competitive and want to be the best at everything. But they the standards that we're putting out there, they're thinking that it's like something that I just like was good at naturally and like I haven't worked on. And so getting other little people that they're like, oh well, I'd have to change my training to even start doing CrossFit. I was like, well then do it. Start doing that. If we want to try to get a division someday or get a competition somewhere someday to have a little person division or something like that, like you need to do it. And
I mean, you're
uh,
basically the ambassador for a division within the sport.
yeah,
I mean, is that your
because
goal? Would you like to see that at Wodapalooza or the games? Like there's the 35 to 39-year-olds over there, and then there's the little people over there. Not, I mean, and I'm not
yeah,
segregating. I don't mean it like
yeah,
that.
no,
I
no,
mean,
no,
like,
no, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, either the little people or even just the adaptives, because like um, especially the way like to me it makes sense the way CrossFit's going, CrossFit Games, and how they're trying to open it up to everyone with the new format. It makes sense for them to have a adaptive division now.
Oh,
It's
yeah, I
much
think it's going
much
to
more now
happen.
than ever.
Yeah, I mean, or I think Stouty and I talked about it. It's kind of like the Paralympics. Like maybe it'll roll in the next week and you know be very
Yeah,
similar to what went down at the games. I think that's great. Who's fitter, you or Logan?
Logan.
You think so? Is that true? I'm
Oh
trying
yeah,
to catch you off guard.
oh no, yeah, he is. I'm still a work in progress as far as against those guys. Those guys have been doing it a little bit longer than I have, and I'm still getting the finer things polished. And
But are there times when you compete at say Wodapalooza or any given qualifier where it's specifically adaptive, not at your typical box, and you based on what the adaptations were, you think to yourself that was unfair, and not just against you, maybe the other way as well.
yeah, like this, I think yeah, this open. The Wheel Wad Games had that Stady puts on. They had the thruster workout that was in the games or in the open the CrossFit Games Open. I think it was it chest to
Thruster,
bar?
chest to bar.
Yeah, for the adaptive they did thrusters and pull ups. I think my time ended up being 2 or 3 minutes faster than every second place, and I was like, I shouldn't have been doing that weight. I should have been doing 95, and like because they lowered us all to 75, I think, or 80. I don't remember what it was, but the weight was lower than what it was in the open, and it went from chest to bars to pull ups because we did chest to bars instead of muscle ups the week before, and it, I was just like, I was like, I'm gonna blow this one out of the water. And I remember Stouty even asked me, like he messaged me on Instagram. He's like, "Is your time right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Wow, you did really well." And I was like, "Yeah, thrusters are kind of my thing." Um,
even though despite the overhead that we talked about.
yeah, thrusters. It's more when I'm going heavier because of
Right.
just like the natural like kind of like your shoulders kind of go down a little lower than typical when you're
Yeah, that makes
pressing.
sense. So does
Uh,
in that scenario, does Logan have to do a barbell or is he using a dumbbell?
I believe he uses a barbell because he's got some
That's
pretty good
crazy.
form with one.
For those
Yeah,
that don't know Logan, he's literally has like maybe we didn't make he has one arm. Like
yeah,
he's like
he has one arm.
I mean
Yeah,
he's the example where it's like, oh, you're feeling sorry for yourself today. Okay, go look at Logan. Like the dude's
yeah,
snatching 135 with one arm.
yeah. And then there's like, uh, and then the other way it would be like the the beach run for Wodapalooza.
Did you do that? You guys all
I
did
did
that
it.
as well?
We did it. We had to do the 5K and uh, me running a 5K. I'm not going to beat anyone whose legs are longer than mine. There's no way in
Did you
hell.
come in last in that event?
Yes, I did. I
Not to
think.
mention there are probably times where you were under the water because it wasn't very deep, but
Oh
it was
yeah,
deep enough.
I had a swim
Yeah,
up part. Yeah,
yeah.
and I think the first time I went in the water, I swallowed some, and so on my way back, I found a palm tree and yacked a little, and it was a lovely experience for workout number one.
Yeah, that was I was not I think I wasn't last, but I was pretty low in the pack on that workout. Do you have muscle
Yeah,
ups?
I do not have muscle ups yet. I it it's one of those things also that it's just like I always have to anchor for sit ups also because of the type of dwarfism I have. My upper body, so from my waist up, is the same size as somebody who's average height. So if I'm sitting next to you, I'd be the same height as you.
So your torso is like a typical height,
Yeah,
typical length, I should, but your
yeah,
legs and arms are smaller.
yeah.
So you
So
could like
getting,
you would like topple over.
yeah. So trying to do a muscle up and throwing your upper body up, it's like you don't get the leg momentum from it. So I'm getting there. It's been a work in progress, but it's the same thing. Like yeah, like I said, like sit ups. Like I have to anchor for it because my legs, I don't have the weight on that end of my body to hold my legs down. So I'll like up against the rig and I'll just clamp my feet up to the side of the rig and or just grab a dumbbell and
So you mentioned earlier you go to Nick Your Anchor's gym. Has that been beneficial in your programming? For those that don't know Nick, I mean multi-time game. I think he qualified this year in the Masters, didn't he?
yeah, he's going to the 35-39 division this year because the format change. He's like, I just want to figure out how this all works, and I'll just do masters this year.
Yeah, I think he was a two-time games athlete, and then this year he made it as a Masters. I think second place going into it. So he's getting ready to go. Are you
Yeah.
going to be at the games as well?
I won't because I actually just started a new job and I I don't have all. I'm not allowed to take that much time off yet until I've accrued it.
But okay, has Nick's being at Nick's box? What's the name of the box?
Uh, he has two. It's 061 and CrossFit 574.
So does training under someone who is so fit and such a well-respected athlete help you develop as an athlete?
Oh, it definitely does. I think I'd say that's definitely one of the things that also motivated me early on and still does was having that to like kind of like look up to, being like, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be that fit. Like everyone wants to be that fit, but then it's also the putting in the work and realizing all the time he puts in and seeing all the time he puts in. It's ridiculous, but yeah, it's definitely pushed my motivation for sure.
Does your wife do CrossFit?
She does. She actually started back up doing the local gym has 574 has a boot camp class for women, and it's CrossFit elements and stuff, basically. And she does that with a bunch of other ladies there, and one of the CrossFit instructors puts it on. It basically just like for anyone that's scared of barbells or like anything else, and it's more just like low weights. So, and she enjoys it, and I miss having her in the classes with me because that was always fun. But to beat her, or she beat me, oh my god, I was never living that down.
Are you? It seems to me like you're very afraid of your wife. Every time I mention her, you look towards the door, make sure she's not nearby about something you're gonna say.
Oh no, well she's a typical New England Italian woman that you just have to be afraid of. She might have a wooden spoon somewhere that she just hit you
She,
with.
she's from New England.
Yeah, she was born in New York but raised in Rhode Island.
Oh, cool. I wonder. Do you know what part of New York was she from, or born?
She was born in on like the Long Island part, but she was actually adopted, and so her family adopted her in Rhode Island.
That's cool. So her parents obviously similar. The doctors were like, "No, you gotta do something with her. Send her to the circus." And you guys
Yeah.
were, and then she had smarter people come along and take care of her, which is awesome. All right, I'm gonna ask you some questions. What's if you had a song to introduce you coming into the next competition you do? What's your theme song?
Oh man. Huh. That is a good question. I don't listen to music enough to.
No,
Um,
you don't listen to.
well, I wouldn't say one describes me. I I'd say I listen to a lot of just like punk band or uh, my genres are all over, and it would sound weird if I'll listen to country music and then I'll go listen to like Tupac and Biggie and I don't know. I used to always know like have this memorized for wrestling what I would do if we had a walkout for wrestling.
Yeah, you gotta have a walkout song. That's fine. Are you a big fan of Vision Quest?
Yeah, that movie. I always wanted to come out in the polo shirt like the coach and rock a singlet over it.
Oh, you got to. When you think about successful, who comes to mind?
Successful, um, like traits or actual people.
Just in general, a person.
Um, I think of my parents. I think of obviously Michael Jordan and other athletes.
You're gonna go with a
Uh,
basketball player, is that right?
oh, oh my, oh my God! I loved basketball growing up. Obviously, I grew up in the outside of Chicago, South Bend, Indiana. But
You're gonna go with Jordan over Bird? Is that being an Indiana boy?
oh yeah, I grew up in the Jordan area. Parents were from Chicago, so I told them once that I wanted to be in the NBA, and they had to have the hard conversation with me that people under the 5 foot typically have a really hard time, and people under 6 foot even have a hard time as well.
Yeah, was
So,
that when they were like, "Look, Mikey, you can do anything, but the
but
NBA,
this,
yeah, but the NBA is too far." That was, when I was a kid loving basketball, Muggsy Bogues was like 5'3", and I was
yeah,
like, if he can do it, I can do it. Muggsy Bogues can dunk. I can't dunk.
yeah. Muggsy Bogues is an athletic freak.
So, did your parents ever have to have that kind of sit down? Is it like, hey, at what point is it when you're growing up where you're like, all right, I'm a little bit different than most of the kids in the class? You said you didn't meet another little person until you were 18 years old.
Yeah, um, I'd say they started having the only time they really had a conversation where they truly told me that like I can't do something was when I was trying to continue on playing football going into high school,
Yeah, all
and
right.
I wanted to sign up, and they said, no, we already had this argument and this promise when you did it in third to fifth grade, and then you promised from sixth to eighth grade that you would be done after eighth grade. we're not doing this again. Like the guys are seriously getting much bigger than you. Like,
Yeah.
and you're trying to play defensive and offensive line. Like it's
Yeah, maybe if
it's
you
not
said,
working.
"Hey, maybe a running back," but
Yeah,
you got to get off that O line.
yeah.
Where did you meet your wife?
We actually met. I actually friended her on Facebook at first because we had mutual friends that were little people, and so we actually hung out in at the Los Angeles, um, Anaheim convention, and we started
Convention,
dating
like
after
there's a
that.
convention for little people?
Yeah, there's a convention, and they it's just like basically like they'll bring doctors and stuff there so that you can get like meet with specialists every year if you need to. You can also they have another organization that has an event that's called DAAA. It's Dwarf Athletic Association of America, and they do soccer, basketball, all these things, and kids will like form teams. Like I was on a team when I played for like 6 years, and we actually won the World Dwarf Games in soccer and basketball, and it was so I've always had even competing against dwarfs was something that was new to me at one point, and it was the craziest thing ever because I'm like I'm taller than some of these
Yeah.
people. What is going on?
All of a sudden, it's an even playing field. I would
Yeah,
imagine if like a typical sized person was in town, not knowing there was this convention, and you guys all walked out at the same time, they'd be like, "What is happening? What is going on
oh,
here?"
you definitely get some looks because like yeah, you'll get a group of 10 to 15 to 20 people walking down the street gonna go to dinner somewhere, and it's like why are there 15 little people walking
Yeah,
towards me
like
right
this is
now?
I'm getting
Yeah,
punked. Like, what's going
yeah.
on?
Where's the kid? Yeah, because you don't see that. Like even if like even if you see a family of dwarfs, like now I have my own, like the three of us, it'd be like out of the ordinary. Like this is,
That's true. I
but
didn't even think of that. Like, anytime the three of you go out, how old's your son?
he's a year and 4 months,
So, I mean, there's
so
probably
he's
like,
not noticeable yet. Yeah.
yeah, okay. I was gonna say like whether, but by the time he's walking 2, 3 years old, is that something you're looking forward to, or nervous about having conversations with him like your father did with you?
Um, I'm excited for it because I don't see having really any issues. Like my mom always used to say, she's like, "You're growing up in the best time for to be a little person." She's like, literally, you can turn on the TV and there's TV shows about it. Um,
That's true.
like
I mean, there's all the shows on like Lifetime and that, and then I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, but I know there's the
yeah,
guy on Game of Thrones. I don't know his name, but
Peter Dinklage.
did you know him because you like Game of Thrones, or because he's like the most famous little person?
Oh, I just know him as an actor who he is, um, and
He's like
I've
the
actually
go-to little person.
yeah, Tyrion is what he plays. I actually really don't even ever watched it, but I just I haven't even finished the first season. I don't think.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I was like, I can't even get involved in this. But he was on. Well, I used to watch Seinfeld when I grew up, and there was a little person. I don't know if it was him or not, but I want to say like he's kind of been the
No,
go.
no.
You know this. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who he is. I can't remember his name. Um, uh,
Mickey was his name on the show. Mickey.
yeah, yeah, I can't remember what his name is in real life. Um,
So, do you
but
have
yeah,
your level one for CrossFit?
I do not. I do not. I've been wanting to get it because I want to start programming for other little people to just start getting them uh, at least introduced and acclimated to it, and just to, like if they're too afraid to go into a box, which I know people are afraid to go to into a new gym, regardless of if it's a CrossFit gym or if it's one Planet Fitness to the next Planet Fitness, whatever it is that they go to. I like just to give them like here, try this workout. This is what CrossFit is. This is how we'll adapt it for little people. This is the way I do this. This is the way you can do it also. like GHD sit-ups. Me and Nick one day thought like, oh, okay, well, there's no real defined how far back should you go. So we just threw a box, like a box jump box down behind me, and it's like, okay, go back until your hands hit it, and then when your hands hit it, then sit up. And so it's like you have a standard then, and you know how far to go. And so it's just like those things that I really want to get into that, so that I can just like at least leave my mark for other little people to know that they don't have to be okay with being afraid of fitness, or thinking fitness results in back. Fitness is the reason people have back injuries, and because of the spinal issues with little people. So many people are afraid to work out in the little people community.
Yeah, it actually healed you. I mean, from
Yeah,
going from not being able to wrestle to being able to compete on the biggest stage in the adaptive community. And what a great niche you can have, for all little people to get involved, to check that out. You should definitely be putting it out there. And I certainly recommend hitting your level 1. And by the way, there is a standard for the GHD, which you would learn at your level 1. And that is you have to maintain your midline stabilization. So you can go back as far as you can so long as you maintain that neutral spine, which
yeah,
typically means shoulder below the hip. People
yeah.
overdo it. I always tell people, look, I go for the ground because I have an ego, but really it's as far as you can go while maintaining your midline. So a little knowledge dropped on this episode.
That's good to know. I know that now.
So, I always like to ask every guest if you have a book that you recommend.
um, I'd say the book that I read the most growing up was actually a book called No Excuses by Kyle Maynard.
Oh, Kyle Maynard is a stud. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
talking about wrestler. Yeah.
yeah, one of the biggest things that ever got me fired up about wrestling. I believe he's actually from Indiana, but then like moved to Tennessee or somewhere in his family, and so like I like related to that so much. Being like he's the only kid in his family who has that, and he played football and he wrestled. And, I think I
MMA. He had an MMA
yeah,
fight. And then Kyle Maynard, for those that don't know, not only I suppose I don't know if is he classified as a little person because he
no,
has no. I don't want to say he has no limbs, but he's missing parts
he,
of all of his
he's like
limbs.
a quadriplegic with he's got limbs, but they're I don't know what the classification would be.
Yeah, but
Um,
he's
yeah,
a big time CrossFitter.
yeah, he definitely was a big motivator growing up that I aspired to be like. And it definitely I I hated reading as a kid, and I think I read that book probably 6 or 7 times.
That's really cool. I mean, and what's really cool to me is you see someone like Kyle and you looked up to him, and now I think you will be the same for many people getting involved in CrossFit. So that's really awesome. It's motivating for me. I mean, I remember when I saw you at Wodapalooa, I was like, I want to talk to that guy. So, and now I want to beat you in a workout with a 7-foot wall ball target, and we can have a wrestling match after.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Well, it's been really awesome talking to you, Mike. Is there anything I missed that you wanted to share with those listening?
Uh, no, just if you ever have questions about myself or dwarfism or anything, just always feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram, and I'd be glad to help. I'm always open to educating or helping people learn more about dwarfism and the CrossFit.
I think that's important. As CrossFit's growing, if you're a box owner listening, you're going to have a little person come into your box. And you need to be ready. So what a great resource to have. We appreciate that, Mikey. I would love to have your wife pop on for a minute, but I don't think that's going to happen. So,
Yeah, I think she's taking care of our son right now, and
well, I'll let
she's
you.
getting ready for that.
Well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you at the next competition.
Yep, sounds good. See you then.
Improving your life or achieving your goals can sometimes feel like climbing a mountain. On the Tiny Leaps, Big Changes podcast, host Greg Clunis gives practical tips and advice to help you build momentum towards accomplishing the seemingly impossible. Each episode provides research-based strategies or firsthand experiences on topics like mental health, fitness, nutrition, finances, career, and relationships. You can listen to the Tiny Leaps, Big Changes podcast on Spotify or wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, one more time, please leave us a review on Apple Podcast and send us any feedback you have to @besthouroftheirday on Instagram and besthouroftheirday@gmail.com if you want to shoot us an email. We appreciate you. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.